We are live now.
Good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you to the series of ESI webinars on gender-specific endocrinology. Last week, we conducted a webinar on the how to keep the transgender of the gender of their choice. So, to continue it further, we are this week discussing about the preservation of fertility in transgenders, and then how to go about addressing the concerns. I mean, having gender is one of choice is one aspect, and then maybe procreation is a major issue which carries along with it. So to conduct the session, we have experts with us. The chairpersons for today's session are Professor Abhay and Professor Hassan from Turkey. I thank both of you, sirs, for accepting our invite. The quiz will be conducted by Professor Karthik, and the speaker for today's session is Professor Suja. I thank each one of you for honoring our invite and be part of this webinar series. I request Dr. Abhay to conduct the proceedings further. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Hari sir. At the outlet, today's topic is fertility preservation in transgenders. So when we discuss fertility preservation in transgenders, it's a bit easy for those trans women, because in trans women, of course, semen preservation or semen cryopreservation is bit a single easy procedure which can be done everywhere. Whereas in trans men, it's a lot of things, like you can go for oocyte cryopreservation, even if you can go for zygote cryopreservation, or even if you can go partial ovarian tissue cryopreservation, and a lot of additional newer things are coming up. So to discuss this thing, we have our one chairperson is with us from Turkey, Dr. Hassan Ayadin is there, and of course our speakers and quiz master has been already been talked about by Hari sir. And Professor Hassan is professor and head of Department of Endocrinology and Metabolism from Editep University School of Medicine, Istanbul, Turkey. He works basically on treatment of type 2 diabetes, early diagnosis of gestational diabetes, and treatment of obesity. He has published more than 50 national and international articles, 8 chapters on different international books, more than 200 presentations on different congresses. He is an advisory board of diabetic therapies and member of Turkish Endocrine Society, the Endocrine Society, and European Endocrine Society of Endocrinology. With this, over to Dr. Hassan Ayadin, sir.
Thank you for your kind invitation, introduction, actually. Thank you. And today's subject is very interesting. Yes, it is mostly unfamiliar to most of us, actually. And we have most of the audience, I think, have lack of experience, actually, on this subject. Fertility is important, actually. Most people in the population, actually, want their fertility. And when we consider the fertility in transgender members, the problem is has many many unknown things, actually. We have to think of that, to think of the trans men, and we have to think of trans women, and we have to think of the children, actually, that they have, whether they will have fertility in their future life. And we will talk on these subjects today, and we have a good we will have a good impression on the subject, and we will learn the aspects of this treatments, actually, what is done in the world, actually. Before starting, I think we have a quiz here, actually. We will start with the pre-quiz with around the 10 question, if I don't know wrong. If then we will continue with the speakers, actually. Then we will start with the quiz, I think, actually. I'm giving the microphone to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hassan. And now our quiz master, Dr. Karthik Balachandran, and everybody, our friend, we everybody know, is assistant professor of endocrinology in Sri Ramchandra Medical College, Chennai. He is having 36 publications in national and international journals, and he is having own blog at medicalruminations.wordpress.com. He follows that, so everybody can follow him there. And over to Karthik. We'll have a beautiful quiz. And regarding before starting, Karthik will discuss about what is the principles and how we are going to attend all those quiz. And subsequently, we'll have after Karthik, and we'll have their presentation by Dr. Suja. Then over to Karthik.
So thank you, sir, for that kind introduction. So let me, without much further ado, start with the quiz. The quiz is named the Transparent Quiz. To be honest, before preparing for this topic, if somebody had given a quiz like this to me, I might have been forced to do Inky Pinky Ponky in some of these questions. So if you do not know answers to some questions, it's not a big deal actually. This is more of a gentle segue into Suja's talk. And the goal of today's quiz is to learn as much as possible about this niche topic. So to start with, these are the rules of the quiz. Even though the topic is obviously not binary, the answers to the quiz are, for obvious purposes, binary. They can be either right or wrong. And you have to answer all questions together, not one at a time. This is because we get a stream of text and it becomes difficult for us to evaluate. And just like in any quiz, you have to answer the question with the question number. Otherwise, you will know which question you are answering. So with the ground rules out of the way, let me start with the first question. Which of the following is most appropriate for an adolescent transgender male desiring fertility? A. Oocyte cryopreservation. B. Ovarian tissue cryopreservation. C. Embryo cryopreservation. So I suggest that you either write in a piece of paper or your favorite text editor. If you're on Mac, you can use TextEdit, or Windows, you can use Notepad, so that you just copy paste at the end. So question number 2, which of the following does not require stopping of gender affirming therapy, gender affirming hormone therapy? A. Oocyte cryopreservation. B. Ovarian tissue cryopreservation. C. Embryo cryopreservation. How long before retrieval of sperm should gender affirming hormone therapy be stopped in trans men? A. 1 month. B. 3 months. C. 6 months. And D. No need to stop gender affirming hormone therapy. How long before retrieval of sperm should GAHT be stopped in trans men? Question 4. Testosterone initiation for gender dysphoria in trans masculine people affects their ovarian reserve permanently. Is the statement true or false? Testosterone initiation in trans masculine people affects their ovarian reserve permanently. A. True. B. False. Question 5. For oocyte cryopreservation to be successful, the minimum Tanner stage required is 1, 2, or 3, or 4. Which of these Tanner stages is the minimum for oocyte cryopreservation to be successful? Children of trans parents are at higher risk of gender dysphoria or psychological disorders. Is the statement true or false? Children of trans parents are at higher risk for gender dysphoria or psychological disorder. Question 7. Which of the following has the highest chance of resulting in live birth? Oocyte cryopreservation, sperm cryopreservation, ovarian tissue cryopreservation, and D. Embryo cryopreservation. Question 8. Ovarian tissue cryopreservation is not an appropriate solution for which of the following groups of people or which of the following scenarios? A. Prepubertal trans male. B. Trans male undergoing hormone therapy. C. Trans male more than 35 years. Ovarian tissue cryopreservation is not an appropriate solution for one of these groups. Which one is it? Question 9. Which of the following is not considered an experimental approach to fertility preservation? Testicular tissue cryopreservation, spermatogonial stem cell cryopreservation, C. In vitro activation of primordial follicles, D. Embryo cryopreservation. One of these is not considered an experimental approach to fertility preservation in transgender people. So that brings us to the final question. Which of the following groups can legally adopt a child or become a parent through surrogacy in India? A. Transgender couple, B. Same-sex couple, C. Single parent. Which of the following groups can legally adopt a child or become a parent through surrogacy in India? So that brings the quiz to an end.
Karthik, should we send directly to you or like that? What is the plan? Here will directly answer in the blog itself.
At the end of the session, we will answer.
Okay. No, not the answers. The answers will be sent to you through the blog here in the blog, or how the people will send you the answer.
Yeah. The answers are now getting populated in the backend.
Okay.
Yeah.
After the quiz, we can have the presentation by Dr. Suja.
Okay. Hello, and we'll start our presentation. It is fertility preservation in the transgender people by Dr. Suja. And Dr. Suja is a consultant endocrinologist from Renia Medicity Hospital, Cochin. She has established first transgender clinic in private sector in Kerala, is Identity Clinic, a multidisciplinary clinic for transgender health running successfully. She is a lifetime member in IPATH and WPATH, medical advisor for all Kerala Trans Men Association. She is ESI Abhi Gandhi Award for Best Research Scholar, and she has received state level gold medalist in MD Medicine. And with this much introduction, I will request Suja to start her presentation, and we'll have a discussion at the end of the topic. Over
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the kind introduction. So respected chairpersons, senior faculty members, and dear friends, good afternoon to all. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. So thank you, Karthik, for that enlightening questions. So let us try to find the answers here. As you know, in most areas of clinical medicine, where treatment can impact a patient's future fertility options, there is where we discuss fertility preservation strategies. This otherwise a standard practice in various other branches of medicine like oncology, etc. However, is lacking in the care of transgender people. Historically, it was believed that gender dysphoria should preclude an individual from having a biological child. But these views may have been based on a pathological view that saw gender dysphoria as a disorder. As you know, the latest WPATH standards of care, for the first time, it has included a section on reproductive health, which recommend that counseling on fertility preservation should be provided to all transgender individuals. So here are my disclosures. I have no potential conflict of interest. Only thing is that science is ever changing. So before going to the fertility preservation strategies, let us see a few scenarios which I had to come across in the past 3 years. All photos have been taken with consent. So this is scenario 1. This is the first ever legally married trans couple in Kerala under Special Marriages Act. So the female partner you see here is a trans woman who underwent gender reassignment surgery, and she is currently on estrogen replacement. The male partner is a trans man. He has undergone only breast reduction surgery. He has a preserved uterus and ovaries, and he is currently on testosterone injections for past 2 years. They came forward asking for fertility options. What to do? Now, this is another scenario. Again, a legally married trans couple. The female partner is a trans woman who has underwent a reassignment surgery, but before surgery, she underwent a sperm banking, and she's currently on estrogen replacement. The male partner, he's a trans man. He has undergone both mastectomy and the bilateral salpingophorectomy with hysterectomy and metodeoplasty. And he's on T injections for 1 year. They also came forward asking for what are their future options. Another scenario here where the female partner is a cis woman and the male partner is a trans man. He has a preserved uterus and ovaries, and again he is on testosterone injections. Another scenario where on the right hand side you can see a trans man who has undergone mastectomy but with preserved uterus and ovaries on testosterone, and on the left hand side is another partner is a cis male. So these are there are several other scenarios as well, but I'm just sharing these for just thought provocation. So today I'll be discussing in this format, that is, let us examine the current practice patterns in fertility preservation, and then assess what are the barriers limiting access to this basic right. And we should know the effect of the gender affirming hormones and medications that we prescribe on reproduction, and what are the current and future options that will allow trans people to have their own biological offsprings. So fertility preservation, whenever there is a significant risk of infertility, we should look for chances of biological reproduction. That is fertility preservation. So all the gender affirming hormones that we prescribe and also the gender affirming surgery, which involves gonadectomy, will definitely adverse fertility. So these, whatever the plans are for future fertility, it should be discussed before starting gender affirmation therapy in adults and adolescents, particularly those puberty suppression therapies in children. So if you look at the various surveys all over across the world, around 50% of transgender individuals express their wish to have a child to whom they are genetically related. Like more than 50% of trans men and 15 to 51% of trans women. They wanted a child of their own. In our own survey, in our multidisciplinary clinic, recently we assessed that analyzed 320 patients' responses, and it was like 65% of trans men and 72% of trans women expressed a desire to have a child. But unfortunately, if you look at the statistics all over the world, actually the discussions, this fertility related discussions with a healthcare provider is happening only in 0.5% of adults and 12% of adolescents. And even that effect of hormones on fertility is being discussed only by 13.5%. And those who actually undergo fertility preservation is even less. That is just 9.6% of trans women and 3% of trans men. And in our cohort, when we analyzed, only 3% of trans women has undergone a fertility preservation procedure before hormones, and another 1.5% before affirming surgeries. So what are these things that limit their access to this facility? One is the societal stigma, mainly. People think that transgender people are mentally unfit to parent, and there were some countries where they enforced a sterilization requirement before this surgeries. And still there are people, even in our fraternity, there are people who think that they are infertile by choice. So why should we help them? But these kind of thoughts are outdated, discriminatory, and not evidence-based. And data has demonstrated that children of transgender parents meet normal developmental milestones. And having a transgender parent in no way will impact a child's gender identity or sexual orientation. But there are other concerns, like what are the risks of long-term exposure to hormones, and like as a minor, in a prepubertal child, if you're taking a decision, it is an irreversible fertility decision. Is the child mature enough to make such decisions? All these are concerns. And other barriers, if you consider, apart from these laws and regulations of the country, the stigma, etc., the main factor, barrier, is an inadequate provider knowledge and very infrequent counseling. And many a times, gonadectomy would have already occurred by the patient come to you. And once you explain it, they do not want to delay the medical transition. They want to be on hormones as fast as they can. They are not ready to wait. And again, cost and invasiveness of the procedures is another problem. And if a patient is already on hormone therapy, and if we advise them to stop it for a while for this procedures, they are not ready because that reversal of that hormones is very distressing for them, psychologically distressing. And again, as I explained earlier, in younger children, the maturity and ability to make a future oriented decisions is questionable. So what is the ideal timing for fertility preservation? It is at the time of assessment and diagnosis. As soon as you, even in the first conversation itself, you can discuss about the fertility goals and present them with various options before initiating the androgen blockers or testosterone. And lastly, the final choice for this would be before the sex reassignment surgery to discuss all these. So before going to the options, let us see what are the effect of gender affirming hormones and medications on reproduction. So we know in a male to female, that is a trans women, usually we use androgen blockers and replace them with desired hormone, that is estrogen. So for in India, the most commonly used androgen blocker is spironolactone, and if the patient is affordable, we go for GnRH analogs. Both these blockers have, it interferes with spermatogenesis. But the effect on the spermatogenesis is dependent upon the dosage and duration of the exposure, and it is reversible unless there is a testicular atrophy. But that restoration time is not definite and we are not sure about it. But the effect of estrogen on testes is more profound, and both together is shown to have these histological changes, irreversible histological changes sometimes, especially some fatty degeneration and fibrosis of seminiferous tubules. Sometimes you may find only spermatogonia in the seminiferous tubule, but these changes are quite heterogeneous and variable. That is, it may vary from normal spermatogenesis to full testicular regression. Now, whereas the effect of testosterone in a female to male, a trans man, when you put them on testosterone, we know that clinically there will be cessation of menstrual cycles by around 3 months of initiation. It will suppress ovulation. And previously, maybe a decade back, it was thought that testosterone induces a polycystic ovarian morphology in the ovaries. But more recent data have shown that even after these trans men being on testosterone for more than a year, showed preservation of normal cortical follicle distribution. So that initial notion of PCOS morphology is negated now, and now it is considered that androgen therapy does not disturb the ovarian follicular pool. You can see there is no difference between a fertile woman as compared to a trans man on T injections. And another clinical evidence would be like trans men who are on testosterone. We have seen that some may have unplanned pregnancies while on testosterone, meaning by that they are ovulating. And serum AMH levels are found to be normal in these people. So now that we know the effect of these hormones, now what are the options for fertility preservation? Options available, we can divide it into either before initiation of gender affirming hormone therapy or after initiation of hormone therapy, or the final experimental options which can be done concurrently with genital affirming surgeries. So let's consider options for trans women, that is male to female. So before initiation of a gender affirming hormone therapy, the simplest, easiest way would be a cryopreservation of a sample of ejaculated semen. But the problem is trans women relate this act of ejaculation to male gender, and so sometimes some may express it as that it is psychologically distressing, and for such patients, we might have to go for an electrostimulation or penile vibratory stimulation or even surgical sperm retrieval, which is invasive and expensive. Otherwise, this cryopreservation of this sample doesn't involve much cost. In our center, it cost about only 5,000 rupees for this kind of sperm banking. Now, after, suppose your patient is already on androgen blockers and estrogen, so what to do for such patients? New data have shown that if you discontinue this medication for a mean duration of around 4.4 months, many people were able to produce a semen specimen with sperm concentration and motility adequate for IUI and even spontaneous conception. But the problem is this time, exact time to restoration is uncertain. And if we suggest discontinuation of hormone therapy to these individuals, they may not be willing as well because of those undesirable effect from that feminizing effect, which may exacerbate their gender dysphoria. So if they are willing, this is another option where you can recommend cessation for at least 3 months before retrieving sperm from semen. And coming to experimental options, that is, if these are not possible, if the patient can't produce a semen sample which has adequate sperm count, or they are not willing to stop their thing, or if the patient is prepubertal, who start their transition prior to the natural onset of puberty. In such cases, we have only one option left, which is a cryopreserved testicular tissue. And we have to do it ex vivo, sperm growth and maturation. Another experimental option would be a uterine transplantation, which has been attempted until now in successfully only in cis women. There are several barriers to this, because you have to, in a trans women, you have to place the uterus in a non-gynecoid pelvis. You have to use hormones throughout to sustain the pregnancy, the vaginal outlet creation, a lot of problem, repeated invasive biopsies, monitoring, everything. But the good thing is that trans men can be the potential donors, because they want to get rid of their uterus and these people can use it. And they are willing for donation too. But all these are experimental options. So for a prepubertal or an adolescent trans women, because spermachy, the mean age would be around 12 to 13. So if you are taking a decision prior to that, then it will be difficult. We have the only option would be a testicular tissue or spermatogonium stem cell cryopreservation, which are viable options in future. So for trans women, the best method would be sperm cryopreservation by any method, or experimental options would be a testicular tissue cryopreservation or uterine transplantation. Now coming to trans men, we know, now we have seen that testosterone is not disturbing the ovarian follicular pool. So one easy method is that a trans man can carry a pregnancy to term. Because once we stop testosterone in between, there will be resumption of cycles within 6 months, and they can ovulate and they can conceive. Because it should be discontinued while attempting to conceive, definitely because of risk of teratogenicity. But the problem is they may not be willing, and it is not very easy to ask them for this thing, because it is truly psychologically distressing for them. So what are the other options? Other options would be a cryopreservation of oocytes or embryos. That is, you can stop the testosterone for a while, this gender-affirming hormone therapy, and you can use ovarian stimulation methods and do the ovum oocyte retrieval and then store it as such. Or if you have a sperm from an intimate partner after counseling, and you can use it for as embryo cryopreservation. But the partner will need to consent for that embryo transfer or disposal, either of which is going to happen in future. So suppose a patient wants full autonomy over his decision, then they have to go for only oocyte preservation without embryo. So the recent advances in oocyte vitrification technique has improved the live birth rate from around 2% to now it is 12% live birth rate. So for those people who are not comfortable carrying their own pregnancy, or who plan to have their ovaries removed and who needs full autonomy, you can go for oocyte cryopreservation, and it has been done. Successful pregnancies were reported by this method. Only thing is, here you may have to stop this gender-affirming hormone therapy for an undetermined amount of time. And this ovarian stimulation, you will have to administer HCG and other agents. So exogenously administer this. They will have resumption of bleeding. So all these will aggravate feelings of gender dysphoria. And they will have to undergo routine transvaginal ultrasound examination, routine transvaginal procedures to harvest the oocyte. All these may exacerbate the gender dysphoria. So for those kind of things, the future experimental options would be an ovarian tissue cryopreservation. The beauty is that it can be done along with the gonadectomy, at the time of gonadectomy. And like that cumulus oocyte complexes can be retrieved from the oophorectomy specimens, and later on it can be activated in vitro and matured. And they have reimplanted this ovarian tissue either orthotopically in the pelvis or heterotopically. And they can, like live births have been reported by this method. Only thing is, if the ovarian reserve pool is less, that is as in more than 35 years of age, this may not be an ideal option. But otherwise, during transition also, or even at the time of gonadectomy, they can undergo this procedure. So in prepubertal transmasculine children and adolescents, only option would be an ovarian tissue cryopreservation. You can take it via laparoscopy and reimplant, and then later on the function restores. So for, in nutshell, for the fertility options for transgender people would be in prepubertal, you don't have much options. It would be either in a trans man, it would be ovarian tissue cryopreservation, or in a transgender woman, it would be a testicular tissue cryopreservation. Whereas in post-pubertal or in adults, you have several methods. Like in trans men, you can go for an oocyte or embryo cryopreservation, or even uterus preservation if they agree. And for a trans woman, you can have a sperm cryopreservation or an embryo, or you can go for uterus transplantation. Now, there are future methods which are under trials, like spermatogonium stem cells, artificial gametes, in vitro activation of immature oocytes. All these are in pipeline. Now, having said all these, remember all those scenarios which I gave you at the beginning of my talk. So how to build family with all these sperm and eggs? It all comes down to what type of gametes you have to work with and what is the place to put them. So this is all permutation combination and a little bit of logical thinking. So suppose you have a trans man with a cis woman or a cis female couple. You have only ova there, both of them. Then what you need is a sperm from either an anonymous or a known donor, and you can go for intrauterine insemination of one partner, or even you can try a reciprocal IVF. Reciprocal IVF is that you take it from the ovum from the trans man is taken, and it is IVF is done to the cis woman. So that is how you do a reciprocal IVF. And suppose you have a trans woman with a cis man where you have only sperms, then you need an ovum and a uterus from either a donor. Along with that, you need a uterus. So you need either a gestational carrier or a uterine transplant. Similarly, if it is a trans couple who have frozen gametes or other combinations, then you will have to go for IUI or IVF depending on the circumstance, or you will have to use along with that a gestational carrier or a uterine transplantation. Similarly, if you have none, suppose both your patients, the couple doesn't have any gametes or is a cis partner and trans partner without gametes, then you need everything. You need ova, sperm, or embryo, either of which, along with a uterus. So you can use donor sperm, donor egg, donor embryos and use it in a gestational carrier or a uterine transplant. So to summarize, see, transgender people do not have to forego having children. Actually, transgender individuals are at risk, definitely at higher risk for decreased natural and assisted fertility rates. And irrespective of the stage of transition, we should discuss this preservation options. But ideally, you have to discuss it before gender affirming hormone therapy or gender affirming surgery. And we know the effect of hormones, that is the androgen blockers. Usually it inhibits spermatogenesis, but usually it is reversible, but unclear effect, especially when started before puberty. For estrogen, definitely it has effects on sperm production and may not be reversible. Testosterone, definitely the effects on ovary are reversible. So the current fertility preservation options for a trans woman would be a sperm cryopreservation, and for a trans man would be either an oocyte or an embryo cryopreservation. The experimental options for prepubertal, especially the prepubertal and children, transgender adolescents, would be a ovarian or a testicular tissue cryopreservation. So I acknowledge all my patients who are transitioning and transitioned, and the entire team of my multidisciplinary clinic and all my mentor and other organizations. Thank you so much for your patient listening, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. This is my team in my hospital. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Suja. Nice presentation, beautiful presentation. Most probably those who have listened, though it's a bit new for everybody, but everybody must have acquired some sort of knowledge how we are going to approach this transgender, specifically if a fertility issue comes in front of us. And in future, it will definitely give some sort of insight for all our endocrine colleagues, how we are going to approach those people. for the particularly fertility point of view. Dr. Hassan, any comments from your side?
Thank you for your clear presentation. Actually, everything is covered in your talk, and there are different aspects as you see here. Actually, it is difficult to approach these patients. Actually, it is better to talk these problems at the beginning of before the operations or before the therapy begins. Actually, in Turkey, actually, we have little patients. Actually, few patients on transgender subject actually, and only one of my patients had that fertility preservation actually, and none of the patients had a pregnancy up to now. But we know that at least some of them actually, transgender people, want their own babies actually. So that's why it is important to talk at the beginning, so to these patients actually, and if they want, we have to start on we start with the actual preservation of ovum or sperm in these patients actually. Thank you for your presentation. It's covered in it covered all the aspects of the subject. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Dr. Karthik, any comments from your side and anything regarding, because you have whatever today you have what you have given in quiz, definitely bit very much difficult for everybody, but still any comments from your side or anything what you want to add to Dr. Suja?
Muted. So first of all, I have to thank Suja for this wonderful opportunity. And in a sense that I'm also transitioning not from male to female, but from an endocrinologist who didn't know too much about transgender fertility and this mind-bending options available to someone who knows a little bit of these things. So obviously this thing, we don't do it on a regular basis. Therefore, it's going to be hard for most endocrinologists, not only in India, but in other places as well, because there are only a handful of places which are doing this. So as Suja has neatly pointed out, there are some various scientific issues involved. And of course, all these scientific issues are being scaffolded in a social fabric, which in turn exists within a legal framework. That makes it all the more challenging and complicated. But as endocrinologists, I feel this would be a great change or great starting point for us to learn more about transgender issues, including the final frontier, that is fertility. We have, in the last few weeks, we have already looked at the initial challenges, that is giving the gender affirming hormone therapy. This is the next step to make them as fully human and as normal as we possibly can. So I think that's a good thing.
Karthik, did you get some questions from our endocrine friends? Actually, I have not getting any questions.
I haven't got any questions.
Yeah. So, Dr. Suja, what is your opinion? Those transgenders who develop some having some child or give birth some child, what is their psychological thing regarding to their parents, or does they really have some sort of psychological issue in future? What they happen?
The children, sir. Children born out of, there has been several studies, sir. Those children who are born for transgender parents, they have no future, any problem regarding their sexual orientation or their gender identity. There is no problem as such. Previously, there were several ethical concerns like this, but everything, the children are quite normal. They can raise a child just like us. It's not different. And there has been incidences like one of my patients, it's a transgender couple, they're planning to adopt a child. So now they want to breastfeed the child, the female partner. So even that is possible. So after looking at the literature, now I'm giving therapy for lactation. So that is how they are just like any other parent, just like us. So nothing is different.
Okay. And Dr. Hari Kumar sir, any comments from your side? What is your view and what is your clinical experience regarding this transgender people who are planning for pregnancy in future, or what sort of fertility issues what you have come across in your clinical experience.
First thing is compliments to Dr. Suja for an excellent talk. I mean, you put like a Chinese checker, you have a ova, you have a sperm, you just put here and there and the outcome is achieved. You made it so simple, but it is, I mean, too complex to make out. But thanks for an excellent presentation. See, I mean, don't have any personal experience of dealing with the transgender people. Actually, that was one of the ulterior motives of conducting this, to learn more in it. So that you learn something from others who are experts in this. But yes, I have, I mean, extending to what Dr. Abhay has asked, there is some issue of, say, gender makeup or gender dysphoria at some point when a transgender is made. Now, when they have a child of their own, does it have any effect in their long term? I mean, how long do we have the data about transgenders rearing people? Because actually, I mean, it's somewhere that, I mean, the gonadal and the physical and psychological sexes are not matching. So does that translate or does that affect the progeny?
Yeah, Dr. Suja?
Sir, regarding the progeny, there has been studies. So that is what I told. It is not affecting the even the psychological well-being of the progeny. But I don't think there has been any quality of life studies regarding the transparent. The progeny has been well studied. So nothing regarding their identity, orientation, or their psychological well-being, or their emotional EQs has also been studied, which is not being affected. But the transparent, because I don't know I don't know about any studies of the psychological well-being of the parent in that family. So, but regarding child, there has been studies and it is well proven.
Suja, a few questions are coming up.
Yeah.
One,
yeah.
Ma'am, do we need to do post-zygote cytogenetics in transgender couple, or for that DSD who want to conceive?
Psychogenetics.
I think this is a variation of the same thing that we are now discussing.
Yeah,
After formation of the zygote, would there be a higher risk for some kind of DSD or anything?
As of now, we have very limited data with this. So future studies only can prove this. From India, I searched for a lot of, I couldn't get even a single paper from India. So we know only data from abroad. American studies, a lot of papers are there where it's a routine there to adopt a child. Like even the gay parents can adopt a child. But from India rules, every country has its own rules and regulations. So only if we have more of, if our law is lenient enough, we can have more data regarding these.
Yeah.
How often do trans men wish to remove or not remove their uterus and gonads? This is one more question.
A trans men, one thing is due to the unavailability of these services. Previously, even when I started my clinic itself, it was all trans women, a few trans men, but none were willing for gender reassignment surgeries because they thought it was not possible. It was not very easy, and what were the long-term side effects. And later on, once a few patients started doing it, they understood that this testosterone, effect of testosterone is more profound when they remove the ovaries, and regarding the later other risk of having the uterus, preserving the uterus and ovaries and etc. Once they knew about it, they started doing the procedure. And now in my cohort, if you look at it, more than 70% of trans men want to undergo uterus and ovarectomy, oophorectomy, and this hysterectomy. But first of all, everybody wants that breast surgery. Breast reduction surgery is the most wanted surgery, but not just gender reassignment is not complete just with the removal of uterus and ovaries. They have to undergo the phalloplasty. That is where these people are very much backward. They are only, in my cohort, only 3 patients have undergone a complete gender reassignment surgery, trans men. Whereas trans women, they're, first of all, they will ask for this, the SRS.
One question I have to Dr. Suja. Sir. In your experience, say you have discussed about the gender reassignment surgery and maybe fertility preservation, the early aspects in Tanner, say 2, 3, 4 or something like that. One of the question also was there. How much time you will wait before you actually think about discussing the fertility options with say adolescent who is not comfortable with their gender?
Yes.
It's a lot of issues to it because psychological makeup itself is not there. Physical makeup itself is not fully created. How much
Exactly.
time will you take in counseling before you actually go about doing things?
Actually, regarding this adolescent population, my experience is very less. I have had only 3 patients in the adolescent age group. All were trans men, and they presented around age of 15 years. So it was not very like 12 or 13. It was post Tanner 5 they have presented. And actually, we didn't subject them to surgery immediately. We continued with the psychotherapy sessions. Counselings were going on. Were given only GnRH analog for the initial period. And after about 2 years, one patient underwent the first breast reduction surgery. Sex steroids were started after 1 year of counseling and GnRH analogs. And again, after 1 year only, they were subjected to surgery, that too with complete parental consent and affidavits and all legal clearing of all legal procedures. And other 2 patients are still waiting. So I think we need to give them enough time because we are not sure. Maybe the parents will give the consent, but that is not the way to go about it. Let them do a decision, take a decision on their own. But even at 16 years, I have found them to be very mature enough to take decisions.
Is there a final word from the parents, or the individual himself or herself is the final authority in this?
So according to our law, we need to get it from the parents.
Okay.
Yeah, and thank you. And there is another question. Is there any risk of any genetic anomalies with cryopreserved oocyte or spermatogonia or spermatozoa? Whatever we are cryopreserving, is there any risk of genetic anomalies in those cryopreservation?
Sir, this should be same as we do in the cis
Absolutely,
cisgender
absolutely. Because even if you go to any malignant patients who are undergoing any sort of
Yes.
radiotherapy, there whatever we are going for cryopreservation, what is the risk? Same thing is here. Otherwise, for cryopreservation itself never increases the risk of genetic anomalies. Yeah. And what is in your clinical experience, what does happen to their bone health when we think we are giving some sort of sex steroids or with GnRH analogs, what to happen to their bone health?
Sir, if they are only on GnRH analog, adolescents particularly, if they are only on GnRH analogs without sex steroids, definitely as we do in pubertal suppression, as in precocious puberty and all, we may have to supplement with calcium and vitamin D and all. Otherwise, in an adult population, we give them, we suppress their, suppose in a trans women, we do give androgen blockers. Along with that, we are replacing the sex steroid with estrogen. So the bone health is restored. It is not being affected.
And another thing is, whenever you are giving GnRH analogs, usually what is the duration? How much duration you plan for GnRH? After that, you shift to steroids or whatever the sex steroids, whenever you plan that. And usually, classically, how much the duration you are?
In an adult, sir, it all depends on the affordability of the patient. Because those patients who are on GnRH analog for androgen blockade, they have a very smooth journey throughout. Instead of others on spironolactone. So they can continue it as long as they are undergoing the gonadectomy, if affordable. And at any point of time, they find it difficult to continue it, we can shift to spironolactone or others. For adolescent population, because of these concerns of bone health and all, I have had patients who have been on GnRH alone for almost a year, more than a year, and then sex steroids were added.
Yeah. Thank you. And first we'll discuss the quiz. Then again we'll come back to the discussion because there are 10 questions, and let Karthik should give about his view and what is the.
Suja, one final question. Like,
yeah.
Is it more common to find a trans male with a cis female or a trans female with a cis male? In such situations, you might end up with 2 similar gametes. So,
Yeah.
which of these 2 partners would pass on their gametes to the next generation in such situations? Does it lead to some kind of conflict, or how is that conflict resolved? Sperm or ovum or oocyte issues?
Our duty is to give them the options, discuss them with them the fertility options, and it's up to them to decide who is going for which. So it is as the first question, your first question, which is more common. So in my practice, trans man with cis partner is more common than trans women with a cis male. And but oocyte preservation is kind of costly affair. It is about like 1 lakh for an oocyte preservation. So most of them, if I discuss the option itself, they reject the idea. Whereas sperm cryopreservation has only 5,000 rupees, which can be done very easily in everyone. So we are more likely to end up with sperms as gametes than oocyte.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And, yeah, Kartik will discuss the which first, then we'll again go back to the discussions. If more time permit, then we'll again discuss.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's discuss the answers. Question 1, which of the following is the most appropriate for an adolescent transgender male desiring fertility? An adolescent hasn't usually decided on his partner. So in this case, oocyte cryopreservation would be the most autonomous and most appropriate option for adolescent transgender male requiring fertility. Second question, which of the following does not require starting of gender affirming hormone therapy? The answer is ovarian tissue cryopreservation. At the time of gonadectomy also it can be done. So this does not require stopping of gender affirming hormone. How long before retrieval of sperm should gender affirming hormone therapy be stopped? The answer is 3 months. Minimum of 3 months is required. Question 4, testosterone initiation. This is a recurring question in many of the audience's comments as well. Testosterone initiation for gender dysphoria does not affect the ovarian reserve permanently. In some way, testosterone is less efficient in affecting ovarian function than estrogen is at affecting testicular function. For oocyte cryopreservation to be successful, minimum Tanner stage required is stage 4. Children of trans parents, again a common question, do they have some psychological issues? Do they have gender dysphoria or DST? No, there is currently no evidence to suggest that any of these are true. But most of these studies have been done in social settings that are quite different from ours, so that is the thing. Which of the following has the highest chance of resulting in live birth? The answer is embryo cryopreservation. The normal IVF that cisgender male and female, routine infertility treatment, that basically uses embryo cryopreservation, which means that the embryo has already formed and it's going to be implanted into a uterus. All other things are pre-formation of embryo procedure. So they have a higher risk of not forming embryo or not resulting in live birth. Ovarian tissue cryopreservation is not an appropriate solution for which of the following scenarios? So as Suja pointed out in the presentation, for a trans male more than 35 years, because of the diminishing ovarian reserve, tissue cryopreservation would not be an appropriate solution. In other two scenarios, it can be done. In pre-pubertal trans male, it is the only option. Trans male undergoing hormone therapy, it can be done. Question 9. Which of the following is not considered an experimental approach to fertility preservation? Testicular tissue is not the option. Spermatogonial stem cell. The first three are all considered experimental approaches, whereas embryo cryopreservation, as I said before, it is the standard procedure which is done for IVF in most fertility clinics in India, and therefore it is not an experimental procedure, it's the default. Now, question 10, which of the following groups can legally adopt a child or become a parent through surrogacy in India? I told you initially that these questions usually have a binary answer, but just like in biology, in law also certain things are not as clear cut. The answer is, it's complicated. You can for example, in a transgender couple, as I last asked the question to Suja, if you end up with sperm and sperm or oocyte and oocyte kind of gametes, the recently introduced surrogacy laws prevent unmarried couples or same-sex couples to have surrogacy. So you must have the uterus component also within the couple. So that is the problem. And surrogacy laws prevent usage of surrogate people who are not related. So the person should be related between 25 to 35 years of age and must have been married and has a child of her own. So these three criteria has to be met for surrogacy. So A is problematic. B, same-sex couple as such is again a problem because of the same kind of issues. And for a single parent to adopt, single female parent can adopt a male child or a female child, while a single male parent can only adopt a boy child through the latest recommendation from CARA. So the answer to that is none of these, or it is complicated, or any of these. So that's a sort of throwaway question. Whatever you answer, you get a right mark. So that brings us to the end of the quiz. While going through literature, this was an interesting image that I found. Before hundreds of years, this was what people thought, where this represents true hermaphrodite. The tower at the this represents penis, and this represents uterus and fallopian tubes, and this represents the gonads. So people thought that it is possible for a true hermaphrodite to become auto-pregnant, or human parthenogenesis was even thought of as a possibility, that they will get pregnant with their own gamete, with their own uterus, and with their own sperm and ovum. It turned out that in many years later, that such was not the case, and that to make babies, whether to trans people or to normal people, babies are basically made with lots of love and a little bit of science, and that science has progressed to such an advanced extent that we are currently at the cusp of developing even artificial gametes, transmuting a stem cell to become gamete, although it has not been tried in humans. Successful mice experiments have been done. So that's what we want to leave you with. This is an image of seahorse, where the male gets pregnant and gives birth to a baby. So that brings us to the end of the quiz. I will now announce the quiz winners. So we have number one at we have Dr. Anna Monteiro. She is the winner of today's quiz. We have a tie at place 2. 3 people have tied at the same spot. So Lakshmi Nagendra, Debab P.R. Das,
Devarchana.
Yeah, and Pias Gargari. Maybe I'm not pronouncing your names right, so forgive me for that. So these are the 4 winners today: Anna Monteiro, Lakshmi Nagendra, Debab P.R. Das, and Pias Gargari.
And thank you. Congrats to the winners. And Harikumar sir there will plan for some sort of gifts, whatever maybe there from the ESI point of view. And Suja, there are certain questions. Again, we have some time we can discuss.
Yes, sir.
One thing is there any case situations where you have faced that with good counseling, again, these transgenders are ready to accept their original sex?
No, sir. That would be conversion therapy. No. Yeah. If your initial assessment is right and you have taken the help of a mental health provider, definitely you won't have to face such a situation.
And another question is a trans man with preserved uterus, if they become pregnant, will they have higher estrogen level, and will they have some sort of psychological problem at that time? Have you faced, or have you?
No, ideally, you have to stop the testosterone replacement which they are on because of the risk of teratogenicity, and rest everything would be because once you stop testosterone, within 6 months itself, every hormone levels go back
normal.
So
that will be no problem. It's just like a normal female.
Yes.
So it will not create any problem. Yes. And last one thing, for those trans male or female, what you will tell he or she?
Sir, I
For
didn't.
those trans male or female,
Huh?
what will be the adjective you'll use, he or she?
Oh, for trans women, I will call them she, of course, and for trans male, he.
Okay.
Pronouns. Yeah.
But at some point of time, they have advocated either use they or them. No,
Yeah,
he
that
or
is
she.
for gender queer or agender people, you have to use they.
Yeah. Okay. And any other question?
Some questions have come up whether sex reassignment surgery before 18 years is legally approved in India. There is one question. Before 18 years, whether sex reassignment surgery is legally
After
approved.
16, between 16 to 18 with parental consent, it is possible if you have taken a proper legal help with an affidavit and all. But it's always better to wait till age of majority in the country. It's always better.
I just want to ask Professor Hassan, sir, in your Turkey, how about the gender reassignment surgery? Is it done routinely or at some select centers? How good is the follow-up?
There is some centers in Turkey, actually. Not everybody do that, actually. Some experienced endocrinologists and surgeons exist in those centers. Most of them are in private practice, actually. In government part, I know just one or two centers in Turkey, actually, one in Ankara and one in Istanbul. But mostly these people go to the private practice physicians, actually. There are some centers that in Istanbul, actually. Our center is one of them, actually. We have an experienced surgeon on that. And the deficiency, the problem in Turkey actually exists in the psychiatric part, actually. We are in difficulty to finding these people to correctly assess in practice in psychiatric part, actually. They don't have any experience on that. I'm working with just one psychiatrist in Istanbul, actually. I don't know any other psychiatrist to deal with this problem, actually. That's the problem that I face in my practice, actually. But it is done in both in privately and in two centers in government part, actually.
And in Turkey, legally all those things are approved by the government, or is there some legal hurdles in Turkey?
Yeah, there are some legal problems, actually. The legal issues, actually, that you have to do. We have to. The government says that you have to assess psychologically these patients at least for 2 years, and after that assessment, if the psychiatrist permits the operations or hormone therapy, then you can start therapy, actually. Otherwise, the government does not let you to start it, the treatment, actually. You have to wait for 2 years with psychiatric treatment. After that assessment, you can do that, actually. Yeah.
One question to Dr. Suja. Your surgical colleagues, are they, I mean, any endocrine surgeons, or I'm not aware, actually, endocrine surgeons, I don't think they deal with the transgender gender reassignments. Mastectomy is okay, anybody can do. I mean, most of the general surgeons also do it. But how about the the genital reconstruction and all, only the Euro people must be doing. Is it so?
No, sir. It's a plastic surgery which is heading the surgeries along with the help of gynec department. Sometimes for ileal vaginoplasty, the gastrosurgeon comes in. For voice surgeries, the laryngologist comes in. And facial feminization is being done. Urology comes in only for metadeoplasty or something.
Oh.
So it's a multidisciplinary thing,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Actually,
mainly headed by plastic.
Yeah, Hari sir. Even if in Bhubaneswar, actually, there are 2 or 3 plastic surgeons that they are doing genital reconstruction surgery. But here for voice change, everything, it's not being done in Bhubaneswar. That is most probably nobody is doing in Bhubaneswar. But for genital reconstruction surgery, there are a few plastic surgeons they are doing here.
Suja, how successful is this laryngeal surgery?
Very successful, Karthik. Very. I mean, you can't even identify the sound once it just changed. It's only needed for trans women. So you can do it as a final step.
But once you are giving, for trans women, once you are giving hormonal therapies,
it doesn't change, sir. Voice is not getting changed. So you have to do that tightening of cords, which is done by laryngologist and 100% successful.
Okay. And thank you. With this much discussion, I think today we have a very much fruitful discussion, and a lot of the things I personally knew today, but was
We seem to have lost Dr. Abhay in the knowledge. So the connection is gone. On behalf of him, I thank Dr. Suja for an excellent talk, and we really enjoyed it. And I'm sure most of the audience would have benefited out of it. Dr. Hassan, for your insightful comments of how it is dealt in your place and for the contribution to the discussion. And Dr. Karthik for making us know that we don't know nothing in this field. So there is a lot to learn. So we would have got 0, I'm sure. So I won't be anytime, facing quiz when you are the quiz master. So thanks for the wonderful quiz. And I thank each one of you for accepting our invite. Thank you for being part of ESA webinar series. Have a great.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.